I also asked that we not go in alphabetical order, and JJ totally shafted us. When I talk about kites, this is what most people think of. Everybody has a story about making a kite out of newspaper and sticks, and no matter how much they ran, they couldn't get it to fly. Or they did get it to fly, and then they cut the string. But this is what I'm thinking of. Modern kites, all shapes and sizes, handmade from high-tech materials like ripstop nylon and carbon fiber. When it comes to kites, there's no right or wrong, no typical design. The thing at the end of the string just has to fly. The inspiration for modern artistic kites comes from lots of places. Michel Gressier does abstract painting. John Pollock is inspired by things like his daughter and Mardi Gras. And Michael Goddard built this beauty based on looking down from the top of the Empire State Building. But how do we go from that image on paper or photograph to something that's actually going to fly? Well, a lot of kite makers use a similar technique called reverse applique. Just using a standard overhead projector, vintage 1950, we project the artwork onto a piece of fabric that's hung on the wall, use a chalk pencil to draw it onto the fabric, and we add some more layers of different colors of fabric and start sewing. Sew along the lines, and then cut away the fabric you don't want. The final result is a multicolor image, kind of like this is the crest of the city of Wiba, Poland, where we're going next week to fly kites. But I can't draw a decent stick figure. So I look for artwork that I can borrow from other artists. I found a lot of similarity between kites and stained glass, and that led me to the work of Mary Tantillo. Big blocks of color surrounded by dark lines. It's perfect for the kite making technique. And I used a lot of Mary's designs in my early kites. And I want to point out, I make kites for myself, not for sale. I'm not profiting off of anybody else's artwork. And whenever I can, whether it's a competition or just fun flying, I want to make sure that I credit that artist. So one day I was eating at a Thai restaurant in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And I thought, you know, their logo looks a lot like a Delta kite. So I stole a menu, started sewing, and the result was my first national champion Delta. That one's about 11 foot wingspan, to give you some scale there. Street photographers will tell you there's great art all around us, actually on the streets. For kite making, the trick is mentally matching up the art with the kite shape. This is a logo on a Chinese police car. Coincidentally, the plans for a shield-shaped kite had just been published in Kiting magazine. That resulted in Beijing 5.0. Like nearly all of my kites, this is reverse applique, layers of fabric sewn together and then cut away to reveal the design. Is it getting lighter in here, or is it just me? Google image searches are another great source of artwork. I've been to kite festivals in India 3 times, and each time I make kites to give as gifts to our hosts. When you enter a search term into Google like Gandhi, and then add the word clip art, you find a lot of artwork that works really well on kites. And those images became these kites. Again, I'm looking for big blocks of color and thick lines, which are easier to sew, but more importantly, they're clearly visible when your artwork is 100 feet away in the sky. You can still add some complexity. You might recognize the pop art of Milton Glazer's Bob Dylan poster. The round paintings by Inuit artist Susan Point always keep me thinking about what shape of kite they'd look good on. And that's one of hers back there on that side of the room. Then one day I was riding the ferry from Cape May down to Delaware and saw a guy wearing a Perry the Platypus t-shirt. It's my nephew's favorite cartoon, so I just snapped a picture of it. It looked a lot to me like a kite called a roller, that shape, which we had recently learned how to build at a workshop in Maryland. Well, that became Agent P, which won the prize as the best flying kite in America in 2010. But it's really just a workshop design roller with a hat brim. All I did was recognize that the artwork would fit onto that shape. You never know where good art will turn up. 2006, the Philadelphia Inquirer ran an article about S.L. Shane, a forgotten Depression-era artist, immigrant from Ukraine. But that jazz combo that he painted really spoke to me. It had big blocks of color and dark lines that look good on a kite. So I put the article into a folder that I keep just for future inspiration. It took me a decade. I had to learn how to make a kite larger than I normally build, but the work of S.L. Shane still lives on in that 6-foot-tall Japanese fighting kite. It's been one of my personal favorites. There's interesting art with potential to fly all around. Could be on a tourism brochure or a t-shirt at the zoo, the logo of a hospital, on a concert poster, or even something by a professional artist. And there's even good art at protest marches. My sisters both participated in the Women's March back in January, where they found that sign, which to me looked a lot like a kite called a Genki. I gotta tell you, it was a blast to fly it across the street from the White House. Although in retrospect, I should have made his hand smaller.